Looks like a bit of a down day in Polygon so far, as it has been with a lot of the other cryptos. We had a promising bounce, but it's not totally clear if we're ready to put the low behind us or if there's a little bit more downside ahead. Haven't done an update in Polygon, but it has been more or less aligning with the rest of the cryptos, all the altcoins. And if you've been looking for updates on the crypto sentiment, I put out plenty of other videos. Be sure to check out my community posts. I can get updates put out much quicker there than I can on YouTube videos. You go to my channel and click on the community tab. But in short, we are seeing the same kinds of behavior in Polygon as well as the other altcoins. We had a down day. What looked like a promising start to a potential five-wave rally kind of fell flat on its face. As a matter of fact, there's only one coin that has been giving us relatively positive setups, and that has been Dash. I've been pointing this out for some bizarre reason. This thing actually had its five waves up, clear through wave pattern down, and it looks like it's ready to take off. And I have mentioned that Dash seems to give us the earliest indications of shifts in sentiment relative to the other cryptos. And therefore, aside from Bitcoin and Ethereum, the two big dogs, I might be using Dash as my other indicator of sentiment, especially amongst the altcoins. As for Polygon, it looks like pretty much every other altcoin. We have three waves up, 1, 2, 3. It could be an A, B, C. That would be the best way to count this, especially with the depth of this latest pullback. And when we look at the bigger picture, we had a BTFD opportunity back here. I actually did buy. I am fully allocated. And of course, I'm in the red because I bought most of my positions up here around this range, about 158. So we're down. But in the big grand scheme of things, I'm perfectly fine being down a little bit if there's a long-term gain to be had. The question is, do we have some more downside ahead before that happens? So we've pulled back more than 61.8%. And I'm actually looking at this thing as if it's a basically a five-wave structure so far, with this peak here being a fifth wave, this dip being the actual fourth wave, and the third wave being up here. I think this would count better. Otherwise, the whole thing could be an ABC pattern up. It looks much more like that in Bitcoin than most other cryptos, and that would entail that we have more downside ahead. This could be the first wave down, and we may be in a second wave bounce with some more downside ahead if that is the case. If we do take a turn for the worst, I would look at it as a first wave down. We have had about a 50% retrace, so that's what you'd expect. So basically a 1, a 2, and maybe we've started our downside direction. That could be about, what is that, $1, 1 cent, about 96 cents. Those are about the lows we could hit on our big picture. Those would probably align with that box. It's actually they'd fall a little short of our box second, but right now it does look like we're going to have a little bit more downside. We could easily go down a bit more. We have some cushion below us. Typically 76.4% retraces about as much as you expect in the second wave before invalidating it. But we have all the way down to 124. That was the low that we hit on February 24th. So as long as we don't pull back below that, we have somewhat of a legit 1-2 bullish setup in place for the short term. Now, in this big picture, I've made a few tweaks and updates. We still have our two patterns as we did before. I put a little bit more clarification on our blue primary pattern, which even after all this maelstrom we've gone through, it still hasn't invalidated. But I did mention where it invalidates is a bit arbitrary, because technically this entire 1-2 will not invalidate until we get below this red line here, which is sitting at about 62.5 cents. So really, there's not much of a practical difference between red and blue. Blue would have us turning around more quickly. And when we look at the big picture, we had that spike down on the 24th of February, but we haven't had anything that low since that we're looking at on the short-term picture. Polygon does have a shorter history than the other cryptos, most of the other altcoins. So there's a bit more risk on this, especially my crypto risk reward scores. This scores a bit lower in the safety factor, the safety score. Because of that, we only have history going back to April 2019, but the overall structure does look pretty clean. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It fits all the Fibonacci expectations. The only concern is that our second wave pullback so far has been a bit shallow by second wave standards. So it was leading me to believe that we have more pullback distance to go, but we haven't seen anything of the sort. And when we look at our MACD, there's a divergence. We are less oversold now despite the lower low. So there are signs that we are closer to a bottom than we are to a top. And as long as we respect that low that we hit, we should be in business. Now, what am I expecting if we do hold with blue? well, actually, before I go to that, what happens if we do take a turn for the worst? This box still remains as it is. I would not expect us to go too far below the low that we hit middle of the summer 2021, just because we already have come so far down. And the way this is extending, this could be 5 waves down already. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. If that is the bottom of our A wave or whatever, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna make that the bottom. So basically this little structure, maybe that's a first wave or an A wave, that's a bounce. We'd project possibly into this box, around this box. So that's about where you expect, not a huge amount of downside in the grand scheme of things if you are holding Polygon. Now, the blue is where it's more exciting. I have rearranged some of my patterns. For most of the older cryptocurrencies, we're looking at this as a final 5th wave in the rally, such as with Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dash, a couple of other older cryptos there too. That means that because of the way we're rallying, it's been a bit choppy. This looks best identified as a 3-wave. This is not an impulse by any means. I don't have any way of classifying it as that because there's no clear 1-2. There's a deep pullback if this is a 4th wave. So this is an ABC, whether it's red or blue. This has been corrective looking so far. That's telling me this whole thing's going to be an ending diagonal, which means the next pattern, the next leg of the rally should also take the form of a zigzag 3-wave pattern. So assuming we've had our bottom, you could have it look something like this, maybe an A wave, then you have your C wave top somewhere in there, and you see the same kind of thing for our final 5th wave of this rally structure as well, something like that, maybe a 4th wave consolidation, that would be a zigzag, and then you have a final zigzag to finish it off. Where are we projecting? That purple box remains as is. There's a lot of Fibonacci confluence up there, starting at $6.36. If we take this entire thing as a 1-2 and we project it out, that's what this fib extension tool is showing us. You typically end up in the 1.0 to the 1.236 extension zone for our 3rd wave in a diagonal. So that would be anywhere from $6.17 to about $9, right around there. You'd expect a sharp pullback, and that would most likely overlap the top of this 1st wave. And then our final 5th wave would take us to the 1.618 to the 1.764 extension. Typically, you see a throw over. So I know I drew it like this, but we might actually exceed the top of the diagonal briefly. Sometimes you have a blow off type thing going on, and then you have a sharp pullback down. So it could be a hell of a crash after that point. That could take us up to 1652 to 2086. So we're looking at 12 to 14x returns. On my risk reward scores, I would take this target as my short-term target, the 3rd wave, and that ultimate 5th wave would be our longer-term target. And I take a geometric average of those to get the basically the gain score. Confluences also play a factor. So still promising rally. It's kind of shocking how little we've pulled back relative to the other cryptos. Polygon just maintained strength, just as it did after the summer pullback. After that swoon, we went up quite a bit. This was one of those cryptos. I think I mentioned many times, this and probably Solana are the 2 cryptos that kept my portfolio alive, kept me from completely being in the hole because of how far we had rallied up. So those 2 saved me, and that is the power of diversification. Even if you don't believe in other altcoins, don't stick with just 1 or 2. That was just Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you're doing altcoins, buy a bunch, buy 7 or 8 of them. You don't know which one's going to save you in the end, which one could outperform, which one could collapse. So I'm going to keep making updates as we go. A lot of interesting developments coming up. I have some other asset class, some educational videos in the pipeline. So don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any of those. If you've enjoyed my video, don't forget to give me a like. Till next time, thank you for watching and happy trading.